Eddie Howe and Newcastle surprised Mikel Arteta, let's be honest. Arteta was not prepared for the Newcastle that he faced today, and Arsenal for the first time in a while looked completely out of ideas. And listen guys, it's not complicated. Arsenal were expecting a defensively solid Newcastle, a team that would be hard to break down, but hopeful that they would be able to find enough gaps and create enough chances to score the goals that they needed. But the Newcastle they got came in much more prepared with a mentality as if they were the ones that needed to overturn a deficit. Take a look at this. This clip right here perfectly illustrates Newcastle today. 88th minute, up 2-0 in this match, 4-0 on aggregate, and Newcastle are high pressing as if it's the first minute of the match. This tells the whole story, and we're going to break it down as usual, but before we do, let me know in the comment section, what did you guys think of the match? Where did it go wrong for Arsenal, and what are Newcastle's chances of winning the Carabao Cup after this specific performance? The concepts we're going to talk about today are Newcastle's high press, almost identical to how Arsenal pressed City just last week, which will lead me to talking about their perfectly executed defensive strategy in their own half, and then finally we have to bring up the difference between Newcastle and Arsenal when it comes to finishing their chances. Let's start with the high press. I want you guys to take a look at these two clips. The first one from today's match, Newcastle up 1-0, Arsenal trying to build with Raya looking for Declan Rice, Fabian Schär presses and slides to win the ball, Gordon with an opportunity and he finishes it. Now let's look at a clip of Arsenal against City last week. Ortega looking for Kovacic, Declan Rice presses, slides to win the ball, falls to Havertz, and of course he misses. Keep that in mind because that's going to play into one of the later concepts. Newcastle did to Arsenal today what Arsenal did to City, and honestly I have so much respect for Eddie Howe. What a brilliant tactical performance that started right from the beginning. Many coaches would have looked at the fact that they were up 2-0, going back home, only needing to not lose by more than one, and they would have parked the bus, straight up just sat back, absorbed pressure, and tried to kill the game. Given the fact that Arsenal had just beaten City 5-1, Eddie Howe did what only the bravest managers would do. He high-pressed Arsenal, and I think the message that he sent to the team in preparation for this match was, the best defense is a good offense. Arsenal wouldn't expect it, Newcastle would be fueled by the home supporters, and he probably told them, let's go and smash them. And so from the very first minute, the goal was simple. Make it clear that Newcastle are the better team. And what I liked from them is that they didn't try to waste time when the play was live. Dubravka would take his time between goal kicks and any time the ball went out of bounds, but the moment they had an opportunity to transition, their first touch was always looking forward. Less than 4 minutes in, Newcastle thought that they had gone up 1-0, but the play was called back for offsides. And the key for me is their intention to score as quickly as possible on the transition, without using useless possession to try and run down the clock. Minute 15, same thing, first touch out of the air is forward, and Newcastle tried to exploit the transition moment quickly. They applied so much pressure that they suffocated Arsenal and should have scored when Anthony Gordon dispossessed Saliba, who wasn't expecting as much pressure, and Gordon missed trying to catch Raya out of his area. But let's look at the goal because I want to highlight an important detail that gets missed by most people. Watch as the ball is in the air. Isak's starting position is actually behind Saliba. Not only does Isak manage to get in front of Saliba, but he somehow, against all laws of physics and nature, he manages to take his first touch forward to Anthony Gordon, then he spins off and gets behind Saliba again and starts dribbling forward. Under pressure, once again from Saliba, and in an awkward position, he manages to somehow get a shot off. Now listen, I've coached at a very high level. I've watched the game for a long time. The skill and talent to be able to do this both from a physical standpoint and a tactical awareness standpoint is world class. This is the exact reason why this guy is worth upwards of $80 million. So for all the young and rising footballers out there, this is the stuff that should be on your highlight videos. But I also don't want to make it look like Arsenal were terrible this game. Newcastle were just on a different level. And this brings me to Newcastle's perfectly executed defensive strategy. Arsenal broke Newcastle's press on a few occasions. Sometimes you can press really well, everyone's in the right spot, but a top-level team will find ways to get past it. And that's what Arsenal did. And this is what made the game so entertaining from a tactical standpoint. When I saw Arsenal do this, I thought, let's see how often this will work, and if it does continue to happen, what changes will Eddie Howe make? And so it was back and forth. Newcastle would press, and then they'd win the ball, and then they'd press and get broken. And I specifically looked at how Arsenal would do this because Newcastle were so intense, and they didn't leave any players unmarked. But take a look at the movement in midfield from Arsenal. Odegaard pushes up, Havertz takes his spot underneath. Declan Rice checks away from the space to open up a passing lane, and Raya chooses to go longer, but now because of the movements from Havertz, Odegaard, and Martinelli, Arsenal find themselves in good spots to regain possession and get forward. But that's probably as good as it got for Arsenal, because back to Newcastle's defensive strategy, they were so well organized in a 5-4-1 in their own half, forcing Arsenal to go out wide and covering the central areas. And specifically the midfield four, they didn't allow any successful through balls, with the backline stepping if they needed to not allow Arsenal's forwards forwards to receive in half spaces. So Arsenal tried and tried, always looking forward to try and find gaps, but they couldn't. And eventually the only opportunities they had to create from live play were to play the ball out wide to players like Martinelli, Nwaneri, and Trossard. But once again, here's where Newcastle were so well prepared. Anytime Arsenal would get the ball wide in areas where they could be dangerous, Newcastle doubled up, never leaving a 1v1 and bringing players like Anthony Gordon back to help defensively, so that they always had the advantage in these situations. And even though this didn't prevent Arsenal from getting corner kicks, Newcastle somehow managed to defend 13 total corner kicks for Arsenal without giving up a single goal. That in itself is impressive. So to summarize this section and to make it clear just how important this was, Newcastle managed to prepare a game plan on how to high press effectively, how to defend in a 5-4-1 in their own defensive half, how to have numerical superiority in wide areas, and how to defend corner kicks against the best corner kick team in the entire world. And this was all done in 3 days of training since their last match against Fulham on February 1st. So now let's finish up with the big difference between Arsenal and Newcastle, and that's the quality of finishing. I showed you guys the clips that were very similar between Newcastle against Arsenal and Arsenal against City when they high pressed, and the difference was that Newcastle finished and Arsenal didn't. So now let's take a look at this clip. The score is 0-0, 18th minute, and the ball falls to Martin Odegaard right around the penalty spot, and he misses. You tell me, if you had to pick one player on the field who would score this, who would it be? And if your answer is anyone but Alexander Isak, you're wrong. Arsenal do not have a true clinical finisher, someone who can take a half chance and score. And I know Odegaard isn't a striker, so it's a little unfair to compare, but his lack of finishing is his Achilles heel. He'll always get respect as a top level player, but he can't solve Arsenal's issues without being better in front of goal, or at least passing the ball to someone who can. And same with Havertz. He scores when he should most of the time, but not all of the time. And Anthony Gordon did exactly that today. I'm a broken record, I know, but you guys don't understand that if Odegaard scores that chance, I may have written a completely different tactical analysis. And that's the point. Top 2, top 4, but never top. Until Arsenal buy the world-class striker that they seem to be allergic to at this point, there's always a higher chance of them losing the big matches. And Newcastle deserve all the credit for this win. Eddie Howe has transformed this Newcastle team, and it was a slap in the face that he wasn't even considered for the England job. But if he keeps preparing tactical masterclasses like this, he'll be able to pick the next job that he takes. Finally guys, before I end this video, please don't forget to subscribe, and if you appreciated this analysis, I'm also excited to announce that we officially have memberships available for this channel. You can choose from 2 different levels of perks. I'm still trying to figure out how it all works, but if you guys want to show your support for the channel, get some cool stickers under your name when you comment, or even get a shout out, go over to the memberships page and sign up. I appreciate you guys, hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you in the next one.